Elvis is one of the worst movies I've seen this year. I've seen a lot of people give a lot of praise to this movie, thinking that it's like one of the best movies of the year and it's nominated for a bunch of Oscars. And I want to give my 2 cents on how I experienced the movie, because I don't really see what everyone else sees in this movie. Because this movie is bonkers. It has like some of the worst editing, the worst acting, the worst choices of music. I just want to communicate what I think doesn't really work in this movie and why I think Baz Luhrmann doesn't really make movies that are for me. I wanted to talk about this movie, not going through the plot, but more going through each section that I'm not really a big fan of. The first section that we'll be going through is... The editing in this movie is incredibly unnecessary and just feels like someone who learnt Final Cut Pro for the first time and is like doing everything they can. There are way too many cuts in this movie. Way too many cuts.
Elvis, come on, you gotta ding, 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 ding.
Like, you don't get even a second to take in anything that's happening. There is no slowing down. And sure, that sounds like something that you could enjoy, but it doesn't work in favor of the movie. A good comparison between this and the movie that has many cuts would be like Crank. But Crank doesn't feel like it unjustifies itself having so many cuts. It feels very justified, as opposed to this where like I don't know what's happening because there's just so much happening all at once. Doesn't feel like it really wants to linger or like let you take in what's happening. And I also feel like this movie can't decide what style it wants to be. It's like almost like many movies all in one. There's horrible title cards throughout the movie. One of my biggest gripes with this movie is just how it interjects like cliches. So a big cliche that happens in the movie is the mic making a noise before he performs.
Oh baby, 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 baby. Baby, baby, baby.
Like, it confuses me as to why it only makes that noise at the beginning. That feedback comes back, because like as soon as he starts performing, then that feedback and problem disappears.
Well, you may go to college, you may go to school, you may have a pink Cadillac, but don't you make nobody's rule, now, baby. Come back, baby, come back, baby, come.
It's something that a lot of movies that talk about music do, but it always seems ridiculous because like that's not how mics work. I'm very surprised that this movie got nominated for Best Editing. There's even certain moments in this movie that looks like green screen, which makes me think that this was due to COVID, if I was to give it the benefit of the doubt, but even still, like, it looks ugly as hell. Something I realized watching this movie for the second time, everything seems like a trailer, like especially in sound. It does like a lot of those cliche trailer sounds that you see in movies. There's even like a mid clap that cuts to nothing, which is similar to like Birdemic.
This is Presley.
So I guess the meeting's adjourned.
This is Presley.
The music in this film is kind of ridiculous, like how it handles old rock and roll. It doesn't seem like it pays any respect. It constantly insists that it's a really good tribute. For example, the first part where Elvis starts performing for the first time, it suddenly cuts to modern playing. Which makes like little sense because it's like, where does that like guitar come from? It's like way too modern, and it just seems like Baz wanted to change that because he wanted it to appeal to modern audiences, but like it doesn't feel like young people would be excited for Elvis, but they're trying their hardest to make it appeal to young people. There's other instances where they try to make it appeal to young people by adding like more modern hip hop. So like there's one part where like they're listening to the like one of Elvis's records near the start of the movie, and they add like obviously modern / trap drums that they're hearing. But it doesn't make any sense because like they wouldn't be hearing that kind of modern production right there and then. It's like who's hearing this? Are they hearing something else and it's just the audience that hears that? It doesn't really communicate or gel well. Another instance where they wanted to add in something modern was adding in Doja Cat, but it feels kind of ridiculous and doesn't really add or say anything to the movie.
There's more sides to the story, I'ma tell everybody. Had your ass sitting courtside with your arm around me. Had your ass sitting first class with your burnt ass out in Abu Dhabi. Could've been what we should've been, but you lost a bet, now you got it from me. Find a seat, I ain't playing this hide and seek. High school, but you finally peaked. Hound dog couldn't find a treat. I'm a bad bitch, but...
And Baz Luhrmann says that it's supposed to communicate to a young audience and like translate it for them as if it's like a different language and this is like a subtitle, which seems just ridiculous.
She's not Big Mama Thornton, Doja Cat. She's translating the language so that a younger person gets what Big Mama Thornton's singing about. So it's the same device. And I don't do it a lot. There's a lot of classic Elvis. Austin sings the young Elvis. There's a real Elvis. But there is this translation device so that you not only understand what it was, but more importantly, what did it feel like?
First 10,000 thought I was dreaming. Said they was solid, it got hard, they was leaving.
Like the bottom of a toothpaste tube, lose weight shoes, one missing a shoelace to it.
Give me a minute or give me a second. I'm back in this thing and I'm ready to set it all off.
And I don't do it a lot.
What's happening? There's a lot of echo and reverb throughout the movie on people's vocals. Like it doesn't really make any sense. It's almost like they don't really want to play the music.
I love you. Never knew how much I care. What a lovely way to burn.
It's like they've recorded all this new renditions because they couldn't use the old music.
Go. At that moment, by the way, I decided that we had to replace all the early Elvis voice because you couldn't use the recording.
If they're recording all this new stuff and then just like editing it like it's a trailer, then is it really paying any tribute to Elvis at all? It just feels like they don't really like that sound of music and they're just trying to make it something that would appeal to other people. But the people that want to see a movie about Elvis would probably want to hear the music, but it plays so scarcely in comparison to like every other sound.
God, he was a gorgeous looking man.
Like there's moments where like the rap music gets more time than the actual songs from Elvis. Like they even make cuts in the movie to shorten down Elvis's songs, like especially towards like the Christmas part.
Turn about. It's gonna be a slow, got action on the outside.
We're lost in a cloud with too much rain.
There's so much wrong with this soundtrack and there's like just so much stuff where I'm like, why would you add this in? Like towards the end credits, there's like even music that like doesn't really stylistically fit. So for example, a guy that's like half asleep ad-libbing.
First 10,000 thought I was dreaming. Said they was solid, it got hard, they was leaving. You won't believe what I done did, you won't believe what I done seen. Police get behind, I run, they chase me, took one for the team. I was born in the ghetto, raised in the ghetto.
And then Eminem dropping one of the worst songs ever with like a horrible Elvis sample.
Longer than it takes a blonde to put a makeup on. Cause me and Elvis gel together like cellmates. Yeah, this the jailhouse. And now I'm getting now. Wait.
About a thing you say. I just wanna feel like a king today. And if you don't like it, you can send a spin.
No producer would ever want this like on their album. And there's even weirder choices which could have been cut out completely. Like one point where the music from this woman at the circus is like pitched up and auto-tuned.
Magic hand.
Like that could have been cut out and you would have gone like the same movie. Something else I wanted to talk about was the acting. I haven't got too much gripes with how people are acting in this movie. So there's some Jiminy Cricket-ass narration throughout the movie from Tom Hanks.
All those muckrakers said in their books was true. Me and Elvis, we was partners. It was Elvis the showman, and the Colonel, the snowman.
And Tom Hanks is kind of awful in this movie. Like, probably one of the worst aspects of this movie is Tom Hanks himself. And I don't really hate Tom Hanks as an actor. I think he's like overrated and does a lot of really bad movies. He's consistently awful because his accent like falls in and out.
In Baton Rouge, we are going to have a carny wedding at the top of the Ferris wheel, so Zena, pick out your next husband. In New Orleans, we're going to use the loudspeaker to announce you, Hank.
And also, like, it doesn't really make sense why he's doing an accent because the real life Colonel didn't have an accent like that. He kind of sounded like every other American.
You do that.
Well, I like to correct you. I kept him back, but I didn't do it deliberately.
Which kind of makes it believable that people didn't know that he was an illegal immigrant. Tom Hanks even says that himself, that like he didn't really know much about the Colonel.
I did not know what Colonel Tom Parker looked like. I had never heard his voice. I thought he would be a tall, stentorian guy in a hat full of bombast.
Austin Butler is probably one of the better aspects of the performances. You can tell that he really cares for this project. But even having said that, I think Baz Luhrmann's directing really didn't help because Austin Butler's like always posing like a model. There's like many moments in the movie where he's just putting his head down in shame and that like cliche kind of like trying to look pretty still and like sad kind of acting.
You see, man, I used to dream of being a great actor like Jimmy Dean. You might have to put it out there that I don't have a girl. It's my favorite comic book hero.
Even though Austin Butler does a pretty good job vocally, there are moments where he doesn't quite hit it.
Glory, glory,
Not really his fault, it's more just like you can't really have that same talent as Elvis in like a few weeks or months or even years. Like it's sort of like Michael Jackson. It's like a natural born talent that's just honed in for like many years. I'm not really sure what Baz Luhrmann's going for. Luhrmann says that he wanted the movie to be accurate, but then also says that he wanted it to communicate to young audiences. And then he also said that he likens the movie to Amadeus.
And Shakespeare takes a historical figure, but explores a larger idea, you know? And also one of my favorite films growing up was Milos Forman's Amadeus. Now, is Amadeus really about Mozart? Is it about Mozart? Or is it about jealousy between Salieri and Mozart and him saying, God, I did everything right and you put all that talent in that horrible, grotesque person?
But then at the same time, like if it's not really like supposed to be about the real life Elvis, why is it following Elvis's life consistently beat for beat? Why didn't you just make a more smaller scale story? Like why did it have to be about everything about Elvis? Because Amadeus doesn't go over everything about Amadeus, Mozart himself. Like it just hones in on this like rivalry he had. Luhrmann really wants this movie to connect with a younger audience, even though like it seems like only older people would want to be interested in Elvis. And the real problem is like if you want like 12-year-olds to watch this, I don't really think adding in trap music would do that. It just seems lazy and a way of connect with an audience that just clearly is not interested in this era of music. He wants this to be like Amadeus, but it ends up feeling like Walk Hard, a Dewey Cox story.
It's the devil's music.
It's alright. It's your call. After all, I'm a boy.
That is a much better movie. You don't really learn much about Elvis's life, really. It skims over things so fast that like it's hard to know what he is as a person or what his values are. They even like kind of change like how he was as a person, because Elvis was kind of like very funny.
As for that, you really are a shy, humble, wonderful human being. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I don't know what makes him think that. You know, this gold belt and
This reminds me a lot of Bohemian Rhapsody, where they took out all of Freddie Mercury's like humor. But the reality is like Elvis was always cracking jokes in like interviews. Like he had like a very good sense of humor.
Do you think you've outlasted every other entertainer from the 50s and for that matter the 60s as well?
I take vitamin E. I don't know. I was only kidding. I don't know.
Very boring movie. Not something that conveys or communicates Elvis Presley as a person well. I will probably never watch this again. Easily a 2 out of 10 movie. I rated it 3 the first time, but then I changed it to a 2. Watch it for yourself, I guess. If this looks like your cup of tea, then go for it. But yeah, this is not my movie.
I've got a question for you from TikTok as well.
It's funny we're talking about TikTok. Check out my TikTok account.
On TikTok.
And in fact, I just had to put out an early screen test on TikTok.